And we are live. Welcome, mystery and thriller fans. I'm your on-air host, Sara DiVello, and I am thrilled, pun intended, to host the incredible MJ Rose, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, USA Today, best-selling author of 19 books, here to tell us about her brand new work, The Last Tiara, and I am loving this book. MJ, welcome. Tell us about The Last Tiara.
Oh, thank you. You're more excited about this than anybody. You're even more excited to see me than my dog is, and that's saying something. So thank you so much for hosting me. It's such a pleasure to be here. The Mighty Blaze has had so many fascinating authors that I'm really honored to be included in your lineup. So thank you.
Well, thank you. We're thrilled to have you.
So I thought I would just start a little bit by telling you a little bit about how I discovered the story behind the tiara. And I know that I have to look down to do this because I have to read something. So forgive me for looking down, but I'll try to get it as close to. Sometimes you get a birthday present when you don't expect it. And on my birthday in December of 2012, I stumbled on an NPR article entitled "The Mysterious Disappearance of the Russian Crown Jewels." And I'm sure any author that's listening to this would understand that I was completely hooked by the first sentence, because the mysterious disappearance of Russian crown jewels. I mean, crown jewels are like fascinating anyway. Yes. And then the fact that they've disappeared and the fact that they had to do with Romanovs in Russia was like too much. So I read the article, and the first sentence in the article really clinched it. The story of the missing Russian crown jewels begins, as so many great adventures do, in a library. So the article goes on to describe how in the rare book room of the U.S. Geological Survey Library in Virginia, a previously unknown and unmarked 1922 catalog of photographs of the Russian crown jewels had been discovered. Now, for anybody who hasn't read the book yet, and anybody who has, I use this, but I put it in a different time period. In my story, it happens in 1948. In the book, in real life, it happened in 2012. But what was discovered was all the photographs in this 1922 catalog matched up with a very well-known official 1925 catalog of Russian royal jewels. So what was happening was, in Russia after the revolution, the Bolsheviks needed money for farm equipment. And so they took all the Russian crown jewels from the Tsar's family and going back in history. And this is a picture of the table. This is a picture of the Russian crown jewels. Of the Russian crown jewels. I don't know what that, on a table, I don't know what that terrible reflection is from. But anyway, so they brought in this man who's a gemologist called Fersman, and his job was to catalog. Oh, thank you. Oh, great. That's from the book. I forgot it was in the book. So his job was to catalog all of these jewels so that they could send the catalog around the world, and other countries and wealthy people would buy these jewels up and they'd have money for their tractors. Can you imagine selling these beautiful things for tractors? So Fersman was hired in 1921, and he takes 100 photographs of all the jewels. And then everybody thinks this 1925 catalog is all there is. But it turns out in 2012, when this librarian is in the stacks, they come across this book that nobody had noticed before because it wasn't marked, and it had been bought by the library from a very famous gemologist, George Kuntz. I don't want to get everybody crazy with details, but it had been bought from an American gemologist who happened to have been the Tiffany gemologist and also the man who helped J.P. Morgan create his collection, which is the basis of the Museum of Natural History's gem collection. So this story is really complicated, and George Kuntz is in the book. But when they compared this 1922 catalog to the 1925 catalog, they discovered that everything was the same except for 4 jewels. So there was a brooch. Let me see if it's any better this time. It's better. So there was a brooch, diamond and sapphire. There was a necklace that was golden and emeralds. And there was a bracelet that was diamonds and sapphires. And then there was a tiara, a diamond and sapphire, incredible tiara that is pretty similar to the one on the book cover. And so they started looking for these pieces, and they found the brooch had been sold in 1927 at an auction, but the bracelet, the necklace, and the tiara were all missing. No idea where. They know that they existed in 1922 and they don't exist anymore in 1925. So that was it. I decided that that would be the basis for the story. And I would tell a story about a woman in Russia starting in 1915 and how she comes to own this tiara. And then a story of her daughter in 1948 and how she finds this tiara after her mother dies, but there are no stones left in the tiara. It's just a skeleton tiara hidden in her mother's bedroom behind the wallpaper in a niche. And Isobelle Moon, which is the character in 1948, a woman who's an architect, finds this thing and knows nothing about it, knows very little about her mother's youth in Russia, because her mother never told her, knows very little about her father because he died during World War I. And she has this tiara, and she has a bill of sale from a jeweler who has bought all the stones in the tiara. And so Isabel's adventure begins just trying to figure out what did her mother own, why did she sell it, and what even is it? And then the story goes from there.
Oh my goodness, it's so exciting. I love history. So I was a European history minor. So I love European history. I love Russian history. I love Romanov history. I think I've watched every single Where is Princess Anastasia? Every single history of the fall of the Romanov shows that exists out there. I live for this stuff. So I knew as soon as I heard about this book, that I had to read it and that I had to host you because this is my jam. Who else can relate? And I cannot wait to talk about every single part of this. So I just want to pause very quickly and welcome everyone who's watching with us on Facebook and YouTube. Welcome, mystery fans. We're so thrilled to have you. If you've been here before, you know how this works. And if you're new, here's how it works. Every Tuesday, I present 2 featured authors. And this is your chance to ask MJ Rose, the incredible MJ Rose, anything you would like about her book, The Last Tiara, about the Romanovs, about Russian history, about this actual tiara, about the missing gems, about her writing process. Turns out MJ is a bit of a mystic. We're going to need to know more about that. So just get your questions going in the comments and I will get them right over to her. And this is your chance to have this incredible best-selling author answer your questions directly. That's what we do here. So MJ,
you're adorable. Can I just take you with me everywhere and you can get everybody excited? You have more energy truly than anybody, including my 3.5-year-old dog. You're cuter than my dog, but you know what I mean. Nothing is more excited than a dog who's happy to see you, except for you.
Well, I love little dogs, and my little dog Pelu is the love of my life. So I totally get the dog love. And yes, MJ Rose, I will be your hype woman because I am hyped about this book. It is totally my jam. So let's talk about this tiara. So as you said, the opening scene, and the scene actually opens let's talk about the mystical part with the mother, now deceased, talking to her daughter through a dream. Where does this interest in mysticism come from?
Well, it goes back actually to Russia. My great grandfather, who was Russian and was a Kabbalist scholar. And for anybody who knows about the Kabbalah, it's very mystical. And my great-grandfather believed in reincarnation. And my great-grandmother was a self-proclaimed witch, a real witch. And had I known we were going to do that, I would have her crystal ball here, which I own. But she told fortunes in Far Rockaway, which is where they came once they moved to America from Russia, but she was French. But anyway, so she was a witch, and she read fortunes for people for dollars when he was at work. And when I was 3 years old at a Passover Seder, I supposedly said something to him that made him decide I was his dead cousin Shlomo reincarnated 100 years later or whatever. And my mother, who is not at all mystical, listened to all this, but became really interested in it and read a book called The Search for Bridie Murphy, which is a fascinating book for anybody who's interested in reincarnation. Way before Brian Weiss, This was a book about a therapist who hypnotized a patient who went back to a past life that they were never able to refute, but they were able to prove. And my mother became fascinated with reincarnation, and reincarnation became like a topic in my house, as did witchcraft. It was just this kind of witchery, not witchcraft, but witchery, just was normal stuff for me growing up. So, I mean, I was always interested in it. I started writing. I've been to hypnotists. I've been to past life regressionists. I've been to psychics, all that stuff. I have no ability. I don't know any of my own past lives, but I'm utterly fascinated all the time with all of it. So I've written 9 books that are seriously into mysticism, 6 that have to do with reincarnation, 3 that have to do with a French courtesan's descendants who were witches in Paris. And in this book, there's no mysticism except for this little beginning and end, which is Isobelle's mother, who's passed on, whispering to her when she's sleeping to get her started on this journey, because her mother very much wants her to find some closure with her death.
Oh, well, it sucked me in because I wanted her to be able to get her message across. And I want to welcome everyone. Welcome Gail, welcome Heather, welcome Andrea, welcome Liz, welcome Jackie, welcome everybody, welcome Dara, welcome Jane. Oh my goodness, welcome everybody. Everyone's saying hi. There's Gail saying hi. The cool thing about StreamYard is I can actually see you saying hi. So welcome everybody. Heather is saying hello from Northeast Florida. Heather, I bet you're warmer down there than we are. Let's get right to the questions. Andrea is saying, I devoured this book and absolutely loved it. Please tell me you are writing another one. Have you ever gone to Russia? I went to St. Petersburg and Moscow 2 years ago. It was fascinating. MJ, have you been to Russia?
So I haven't been to Russia. I very much want to go to Russia, but when I was finally able to go, it was clear that it wasn't going to be a trip that I felt comfortable making. Mm-hmm. So I have stories about Russia that were passed down from my great-grandparents to my grandparents. I have one of their Russian coins. I have little Easter eggs like in the book. They're not Fabergé, but they are enamel. And I read a lot. When I write these books, I read an enormous amount of source material, which means I read everything that I can that's written by people from the time period themselves, as opposed to historians talking about it. So I read one of the fascinating books, and I have a reading list. So anybody who's interested in my reading list, if you email me through my website, which is just mjrose.com, I will send you the reading list. And one of the books on the reading list was written by one of the tutors to the Tsar's children. He taught them English. And so he wrote a book about his years with the Tsar's children, which was really helpful, probably the most helpful thing that I read. And also I read the letters from all the duchesses to their friends. There's a great book that's written by a historian about the Grand Duchesses, and that was also incredibly helpful. And I am writing another book, which has none of the characters in this book, except for people who've read this book. Julius Reed is 50 years old in the next book. It takes place in 1985 and 1941. So the Midas Society lives on, and it has to do with the Midas Society and a whole new group of characters and a whole new group of pieces of jewelry.
Ooh, fascinating. I love that. And just to make sure nobody missed it, if you email MJ through her website, she will send you her reading list. I think we all need to know that, to have that reading list. Thank you for the generous offer, MJ. So I am fascinated tell us a little more about your research. So you read original source material, you read the actual letters that the duchesses, their imperial highnesses wrote to each other. What was it like to read those? What else did you do for research?
I read the Grand Duchess's things. I read some things that were written by people who were jewelers who worked for Fabergé, short pieces. I read a lot about 1948, about people who were working so in Isobelle in 1948, who's Sophia's daughter, who's found the crown, is an architect in New York in 1948, which is very much a field for men. And there were very few women in the field for real. And she was working for Skidmore, Owings and Merrill, which is a real architecture firm. And I had her working at the Secret City in Oak Ridge, which is a real place. For those of you who don't know, during World War II, there were 3 secret cities built by the United States government in order to build the bomb. Each city built a different part of the bomb. Nobody knew what they were doing at each different place, except for the people at the very top. But they split up the work so that nobody could figure out what was going on in case there were spies. So the way they built these secret cities was like overnight. They had architecture firms go in and engineers go in and literally build them housing, libraries, movie theaters, hospitals, schools, because people just moved there with their families for 2 years and 3 years. So Isobelle worked at one of those secret cities before she moves back to New York after the war is over. So I read a lot of source material from women who lived in the secret cities and who had other jobs. There were actually no female architects who were at the secret cities, but there were librarians, nurses, teachers, wives, daughters, sisters, people like that. So I read all of their material. There's a great book about them. A couple of people have written fiction about the secret cities, but I don't read any historical fiction that takes place during the period that I'm writing about while I'm writing, because I could pick up something that an author made up and not know it's made up. So I have to be really careful that I'm not doing that.
That makes sense. So let me ask you, MJ, in all of your rigorous research, do you think you may have solved this mystery for real about where these jewels are? Where do you think they went?
No, I didn't. I mean, we have nobody has any idea. And it's interesting. People are obsessed with tiaras, it turns out. Like Sotheby's, told me that of every piece of jewelry word that you can search at their auction site, the number 1 searched word is tiara. There are, for people, I don't know that anybody knows this, but there are a lot of, on Instagram, there are a lot of people who are tiara obsessed, who post pictures of tiaras every day. There are blogs that are dedicated to royal jewelry, which feature tiaras all the time. So everybody in that world and in the jewelry historian world, everybody knows about this discovery from 2012 and the missing tiara. Town and Country's written an article, a major article about it, but nobody has any idea where it is. At this point, with all the press that there's been in the last since 2012, I think the tiara was taken apart and the jewels were sold, like I have happened in the book, and the skeleton of it was just discarded, because the skeletons are just silver over gold. They're not, the skeleton itself isn't worth that much money. They're very light so that you can wear them on your head.
So your head isn't you're not getting
crowns,
enough
on
work
the other
out.
hand, are very heavy, and there's a whole, if you're a jewelry historian, there's a whole thing. A crown is not a tiara, and a bandeau is not a tiara. So a crown, obviously, is a crown. It goes all the way around, and it goes up. A tiara can be flat or go up, but it's a headband, right? I mean, think of it as a headband. It can go around the back, but the tiara itself is only what's in the front. And
I didn't know that.
A bandeau, it tends to be flatter than a tiara, but they're sort of interchangeable. And there's all this protocol about a tiara. If you're British, you can't wear a tiara. You're not supposed to wear a tiara until you're married. You can wear other things. And Downton Abbey, it's a whole thing. You'll never see one of them wearing a tiara until after they're married. There's a whole thing in Bridgerton about the tiaras, that they did a few things wrong. So it's all fascinating about tiaras.
That is fascinating, and I had no idea that it was the most searched for term, that there was this tiara fever.
Part of it is, it's one of the very few pieces of jewelry that we don't all have. I mean, we all have a ring or a necklace or bracelet or watch, but very few people have tiaras. And in America, I think that there's a whole fascination with them because of Disney, actually. Because when we were little girls, we watched Disney movies, and there are tiaras. Like Cinderella has one, and then in Snow White, the queen has a crown, and all the Disney characters, Ariel has a tiara. And so we all grow up with these pretend tiaras when we're little, and then we grow up and we can't have them, but we see royalty having them. So I think that there's this whole fascination with us and tiaras and royalty that you don't necessarily have when you are in a country that has them as part of the, that people wear them. So for a lot of women, tiaras, the only time you'd ever possibly wear a tiara is when you get married.
Right. Right. Oh, that makes so much sense. I love that. Now, let's talk about the craft of writing this, MJ. So, Publishers Weekly raves that The Last Tiara is engrossing as it chronicles a New York City architect's quest to unravel the mystery behind a tiara that she finds hidden in a wall of her late mother's Manhattan apartment. A wonderfully twisty plot that keeps the reader wanting to know more. How do you write an engrossing book? I mean, how do you do it? How do you write such a twisty plot? Give us a peek into your process.
It's torture. I don't have any idea. Every book is like, I've never written a book before, truly. And I'm not the only one. My friends and I all talk about this. I do know part of it is I write sort of in a trance. I spent 3 to 6 months doing research and making notes about the plot. I don't do a really detailed plot, but I need to know what Steve Berry calls the woo-woo moment, the aha moment, these different moments. Like I need to know, I see it as a journey. I need to know where it starts. I need to know where it finishes. I don't need to know everything about the middle, but I need like about 12 big plot points. And I torture myself for months trying to come up with like this plot. Like, okay, I know there's a tiara, but what happens to it, and what is it, and who cares about it, and why does it matter, and what's gonna happen to the reader when they find out the secret behind the tiara, if there is one. But I write. So while I'm doing that research, I'm keeping a journal for the main character because I find it really helpful to get inside the main character's head. And I keep stuff in the journal. It's more like a book of collages about the main character and quotes and poetry and smells and just all kinds of things. I write with ink and paper. In Smythson journals, there's a different one for every book. It's always different color. And then when I get ready to write, I write every morning from 6:30 to 8:30-ish with Gregorian chants in the headset. Every single book, Gregorian chants, because in the first 30 seconds of listening to a Gregorian chant, I sort of disappear. And then I just literally write down what I'm seeing in my head play out like a movie. And I just write until I stop. It's usually about anywhere from an hour to 2 hours. And then I just stop and I don't try to write anything else the rest of the day, but I'm thinking about the plot the rest of the day. This is very real to me because I'm in the middle of the next book and it's torture. It's just not going. I don't know what's going to happen. I know some stuff that happened. It's not exciting yet. So it's just very organic. And then when I finish that first draft, which I just write straight through, I read it usually 3 or 4 times to learn what the story is, because I don't remember a lot of what I wrote because I'm really not quite there. And so I read it and it's really like somebody else wrote it. And I then figure out how to make it work. It's very creepy.
I love that. I'm a yoga teacher, and a mystic myself. So Gregorian chants are my jam. This resonates. I love it. I love it. Margaret from YouTube is saying, I love people finding things hidden in the walls or floors. Super fun, inciting incident. So Margaret, also a member of our Mighty Blaze team, also an author specializing in Scottish and English historical fiction.
Oh.
Often my partner in crime. Margaret, great point. I love when people find hidden things in walls. Why did you do it? Why did you think of this in the wall, MJ? How did you think of it? Why did you do it that way?
I don't, that's one of those great questions. I don't know why things happen. I guess because she was she had to find it. She was an architect. I figured she moved into her mother's apartment and she's going to renovate it. So she found it in the wall. I think in the beginning she didn't find it in the wall, and then she did. In the next book, somebody finds something in a great hidden place too. It starts off that way. I think I've always wanted, I grew up on Nancy Drew.
Me too.
Right. And so I think really all I'm doing is rewriting every Nancy Drew book. Right. So it's the secret of the hidden clock over and over and over and over again. That's all I'm doing. I'm not original at all. I just dress it up in different clothes. The Secret Garden, Nancy Drew, and Rebecca.
Oh my God.
I just rewrite those books all the time.
Yes, and Anne of Green Gables. So for me, it's The Secret Garden, Nancy Drew, and Anne of Green Gables.
I wasn't an Anne of Green Gables person, but it was those three. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Our next question coming from Andrea. She said, do you have a tiara of your own? MJ, I'm betting you do. Tell us.
I don't. I have my Barbie's tiara from when I was a little girl. And I went crazy ripping my house apart when this tour started to try to find Barbie's tiara because it's like this big, right? And it's adorable. But I haven't been able to find it anywhere, but I know that I have it. But I found the tiara I want. Unfortunately, it's Cartier Aquamarine Art Deco tiara that belongs to the British royal family, which even if you could copy it would cost, $150,000 to copy.
Oh my God. Yeah, exactly. And the British royal family is probably not willing to part with it. Ooh, Margaret saying she is here for the tiara discussion. Margaret, you and me, and I think you're speaking for everybody. I love it.
I did a tiara discussion with a jewelry historian that I can try to find there's a live link to it to watch it over again. Ooh. And I'll find it. So if you write me and ask me for the tiara discussion, I'll send that. There's lots of pictures of great tiaras that we found that we thought were beautiful. Ooh. And Marion Fazil, who's a jewelry historian who's written 7 nonfiction books about jewelry, and I talked about the tiaras. She talked more than me because she's the historian, but it was a great talk we did 2 weeks ago.
Oh, I love that. Oh, Margaret's adding that crowns are a thing on TikTok also, by the way.
Really?
Who knew? I had no idea.
I didn't either.
And Margaret's adding, she's laughing at the Nancy Drew thing. It's what we all want, right? The same feeling, different twist. Absolutely. That's why these books work. They work so well. So MJ, tell us about the process. Okay. So you spend 3 to 6 months researching it. You do a rough outline with the beginning, the middle, the end. You don't have to know everything that happens in the middle. Then you write every day in a trance-like state to Gregorian chants. I love it. So channeling the divine.
Crazier as you repeat it. Yes. And then that takes about 3 to 6 months also. And then I start rereading it. And then I love editing because all the dirty work's been done, right? All that weird work's been done. And I can edit for longer every day. Just edit 5 pages and go back to it 2 hours. I don't have to be in a trance to edit. I also have an editor, a fabulous editor named Sarah Branham, who was my editor at Atria for several of my books and then went freelance. So she's my beta reader. So once I have a rough draft, or even if I'm stuck, like I got a little stuck on the book I'm writing now, and I let her, so we had 4 hours of conversations when I had gotten to the 50,000 word part, because I really couldn't figure out something that wouldn't make sense if I told you, so I'm not going to tell you. But Sarah's incredible, and she's edited, I guess, 6 of my books now, and she's really critical to the process.
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that all Sarahs are really incredible. It's just a thing, right?
Of course.
I love it. Oh my gosh. I just looked at the clock and realized it is time for the lightning round. I feel like we've been talking for 30 seconds, but somehow a half an hour has passed.
Yes, so, that was very fast.
It went really fast. And we're getting tons of hearts up. So anyone who has any last questions for MJ, get them going in the comments. Welcome, Mary Claire. Good to have you. Any last questions for MJ, get them going because we have just about 2 minutes left. And MJ, I have one more question of mine. What do you want people to walk away from this book having learned, having felt, having experienced? What do you want to leave us with?
I just write so people can escape and be entertained for a little while. And my philosophy is that if I write about magic and mystery that I think is in all of our lives in little ways, if I write about it in big ways, then maybe people will look at their own lives and see more of the magic and mystery in their lives. And that'll be enough that I did.
Oh, I love that. I love that. We have one more question. Jewelry historian. Tell us about the jewelry historian.
Well, Marion Fazil is a jewelry historian who I write articles for her magazine, which is called The Adventurine. which is a
Ooh.
stone. Adventuring is a stone. And you can
Oh.
find her on Instagram, The Adventuring. And
Ooh.
then she publishes, the magazine's always published online, and it changed up. She puts stories up all the time. She's incredible. And she's written 7 nonfiction books about jewelry. And we met on a book of mine, my actually favorite book of mine, called The Secret Language of Stones, which is my first book about a jeweler, which takes place in Paris in the 1900s. And Marion interviewed me for the article because I buy a piece of jewelry for each of my characters and have since my first novel. We haven't even gotten to that. And I can tell you're now going crazy, but yes, every one of my books, there's a piece of jewelry that I've bought so I can connect to my character. So Marion heard about that, interviewed me, and we got to be friends. And so she's helped me with the history of the jewelry in the books. And she's great. And she's in the conversation with me about the tiaras.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Welcome, Alexandra. Good to have you. So what piece of jewelry did you buy for the last tiara? If it wasn't a tiara?
I took all the little eggs that I had and I bought a couple more, and I made the necklace that's in the book where she wears all the eggs on her necklace. I made myself that necklace. But my eggs are scratched and chipped because I could only afford scratched and chipped ones, because the really good ones are like $5,000 to $20,000 an egg.
Oh my God. Wow. That's crazy. I didn't know that. I just want to mention that your book also earned an incredible rave review from Booklist, praising your intertwining mysteries, a nod to romance, the historical tale of the demise of Mother Russia, a hidden treasure, long lost love. You've gotten some really, you have earned some incredible reviews. As an author, do you read your reviews? Does that feel good, or you just never read them? What's your policy on reviews?
No, I love reading the good reviews. I only remember the bad ones, though. I still remember my first bad review, which was in the Washington Post in 1999, when my first book came out, and the Washington Post said, M.J. Rose will never go down in history as being an important author, but she will be remembered as the first author to use the internet to get published, which is a whole other story. But I still remember that they went on to call the book trash. And the author of the review, then commented that she'd written a book on the same subject, but hers hadn't gotten published. And so it was like, oh, really? And that's who you gave the review to write? But I remember the entire review. But of course, we love good reviews. And they make us feel, when a reader writes that the book mattered to them, that's it. That's what matters. That keeps us going.
Well, I'm going to pop up this good review, which is covering half of our faces, but I just have to share Publishers Weekly raving that this is engrossing, a wonderfully twisty plot, one of the many, calling it a winning story, one of the many rave reviews that you have earned with this book, which was also chosen by Frolic as a best book of winter, and also chosen by Apple as a best book of winter. So I'm going to have to say that the Schadenfreude that the WAPO writer displayed years ago, it was quite wrong, because look at how incredible this book is doing.
And she didn't ever go on to get published, by the way.
Of course, perhaps her jealousy was blocking her. But no, congratulations on all of the amazing reviews that you have earned. Margaret saying, such a great interview. We'll definitely check out your books. Thank you so much, Margaret. Dara saying she is anxious to read The Last Tiara. Dara, thank you. And I just want to remind everyone that today, with our very special partnership with bookshop.org, which supports independent bookstores, you can grab your copy of this incredible book, which, by the way, has such a beautiful cover. You can grab your copy of this book and support independent bookstores, and they need our love right now during the pandemic. So that link will be in the comments. So MJ Rose, thank you so much for joining us, you incredible, accomplished author. Thank you for sharing your wit, your wisdom, the behind the scenes look. We're getting hearts from Facebook. Thank you all of us for joining us. And please come back and chat with us next time, because we've loved having you here on Mighty Mysteries.
Yeah, you're incredible. Thank you, everybody, for coming. But Sarah, you're You have more energy than any interview I've ever had in my whole life. Thank you so much.
And I haven't even had my caffeine yet today.
Oh my God.
I think I'm just excited
That's
about this book and
frightening.
excited to host you. So this has been wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Hey, Lisa, good to have you as well. Everybody, thanks so much for coming. And don't forget to buy your copy of The Last Tiara today. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you next time on Mighty Mysteries.
Thank you.